Hello everyone, I'm Alex, and today we're going to look into the case of a 17-year-old girl who left the cafe where she worked on the weekend and disappeared without a trace. The police discovered several chilling clues that indicated something terrible had happened to this girl. From the very beginning, the case became the hottest story in the media in Sweden, attracting over 1,000 people to join the largest search effort in the country's history. In the end, they uncovered the heartbreaking truth, leaving everyone stunned by how such a tragedy could occur. Lisa Holm was born on February 7, 1998, in a small town in Sweden. It was a peaceful and quiet place where she lived with her parents and older sister. Lisa was kind, positive, and determined. Even before graduating, she had decided to go to Australia to study architecture. Lisa also frequently traveled with her parents, exploring many different countries. From her teenage years, she was quite independent and worked several part-time jobs to support herself. In the summer of 2015, when Lisa was 17 years old, she got her first serious job at a cafe about 40 minutes drive from home. During the first few weeks, her parents drove her to work, but later her father decided to buy her a scooter. Lisa had a license for this type of vehicle, whereas she could only get her car license when she turned 18. She was very happy with the gift as she wanted to commute on her own. But in the first few weeks, her father still drove alongside her to ensure her safety since she had little experience driving on the road. Lisa only worked on weekends, and each morning and evening, her father accompanied her. This continued until June 7th, when he let her drive to the cafe alone. That afternoon, Lisa's parents decided to visit her at the cafe for lunch. The cafe was quite busy that day, so Lisa was busy with work. She took a quick break to have lunch with her parents, and then they went back home. At 6:23 p.m., Lisa texted her father saying she was leaving the cafe. But just 3 minutes later, he received a call from her. He answered the phone, but no one responded. He heard some background noise and thought Lisa had accidentally dialed the wrong number. He assumed she was talking to a colleague and also heard the sound of a car door closing. He called her name several times but received no response. So he ended the call and waited for her to come home. However, Lisa did not return. An hour passed, and her parents started to worry. She should have been home by now. Her father immediately thought something might have happened to her on the way. This was the first time Lisa had driven alone on the scooter, and he was very concerned for her safety. He tried calling her multiple times, but her phone was off. After waiting a few more minutes, he decided to drive around looking for her. Since Lisa was supposed to take the shortest route, he feared she might have had an accident, so he drove slowly and carefully along the road. But he couldn't find her anywhere. Eventually, he arrived at the cafe where Lisa worked, but she was still not there. When he arrived, he noticed that Lisa's scooter was still parked in front of the building. At that moment, he felt relieved, thinking she might have been late to work for some reason. However, inside the cafe, no one was there, and he noticed something strange. Lisa's scooter key was still in the ignition, and her helmet was hanging on the handlebars. All of this made him believe something terrible had happened to his daughter. Lisa would never leave her key in the scooter or leave it unattended in the parking lot. Meanwhile, Lisa's mother called the cafe owner to ask about Lisa's whereabouts. However, the owner said she didn't know where Lisa had gone. She mentioned that she had called her staff around 6 p.m., and they said they were cleaning up to close the cafe. After receiving the call from Lisa's mother, the cafe owner immediately got into her car and headed to the cafe. On the way, she called 4 friends who lived nearby and asked for their help in the search. Their last hope was that Lisa, for some reason, had decided to take the bus instead of riding her scooter. They checked the bus schedules, and Lisa's mother and sister drove to the bus station in town. Unfortunately, this theory was not confirmed. Lisa was not on the bus, prompting her family to immediately contact the police. By now, it was almost 1 a.m., and the night was pitch black. The police immediately launched a large-scale search. The fact that Lisa's scooter had been left in the parking lot with the key still in the ignition led them to believe it was a kidnapping. Cases like this were very rare in Sweden, especially in the rural area where Lisa lived. Therefore, The police quickly mobilized several search teams with sniffer dogs, while other officers began knocking on doors near the cafe to investigate. When Lisa's friends and classmates learned of her disappearance, they spread the word on social media in hopes of attracting attention and potentially finding witnesses. The search continued through the night, but yielded no results. By Monday morning, the police announced Lisa's disappearance to the public, urging anyone with useful information to come forward. At the same time, a man working at a warehouse across from the cafe discovered a motorcycle glove on the floor and reported it to the police. The detectives had checked this warehouse the night Lisa went missing but had not found the glove at that time. They brought the glove to Lisa's parents, and they confirmed it was their daughter's. This discovery reinforced the theory that Lisa had been kidnapped, prompting the police to mobilize more resources for the search. By now, the news of Lisa's disappearance had spread across the country, and hundreds of volunteers had joined the search. On Tuesday, the police received more alarming clues. Volunteers searching along a dirt road a few hundred meters from the cafe found a phone case, a receipt, a ticket, and a broken phone screen. The investigators immediately determined that all these items belonged to Lisa and focused their search in that area. Shortly after, they found more parts of the broken phone, Lisa's ID, and more receipts. All of these items were scattered along the dirt road. After finding this evidence, the police were almost certain that Lisa had been kidnapped. They dedicated all their resources to the search, and with each passing day, more people joined. The case became the main topic in Swedish media, and hundreds of volunteers from across the country came to participate. A local volunteer organization specializing in missing person searches also joined, making the search for Lisa the largest in modern Swedish history, with over 1,000 people participating. The police also received numerous calls providing information. One woman reported that the day before Lisa disappeared, she went for a run and encountered a man standing next to a car who stopped her in the middle of the road. He spoke in English and asked for directions to a city she had never heard of. She tried to help him using Google Maps, but the man insisted that she get in his car to guide him directly on his navigation system. Of course, the woman found this request suspicious and refused. Continuing her run, she also shared an interesting detail with the police. She believed she had seen this man with a group of workers repairing the warehouse across from the cafe. Lisa's co-workers also provided observations from the day she disappeared. One of them saw two men standing across the street from the cafe, staring in the direction of the cafe. At the time, they didn't think much of it, but after Lisa went missing, they shared this information with the police. The next morning, Wednesday, Lisa's father, along with a few friends, continued searching along the dirt road where her belongings had been found. When they went a bit further, they made another disturbing discovery: Lisa's driver's license and house keys. Everything seemed to suggest that Lisa had been taken down this path, away from the cafe, while her kidnapper discarded her belongings from the vehicle or whatever means they used to abduct her. The police and volunteers focused their efforts on this area, but no further items were found. That evening, a friend of Lisa's father, on his way home after the search, noticed that the police tape had been removed from the warehouse where Lisa's glove had been found. The man decided to check again to see if any clues had been missed. He took a flashlight from his car because it was already dark and walked around the warehouse for a few minutes. When he carefully examined the floor, he noticed something shiny. Upon closer inspection, he found a woman's earring and another similar one nearby. The man immediately reported this to the police. When the police showed the earrings to Lisa's parents, they confirmed that they were indeed their daughters. The police immediately sealed off the warehouse again and conducted a more thorough search. Later, the lead investigator explained that the main objective on the first day of Lisa's search was to find her, so the warehouse inspection hadn't been detailed. They might have overlooked small items like the earrings. This time, forensic experts and police dogs were deployed. During the more thorough search, they discovered a strange piece of evidence behind a wall: human waste. This immediately drew the police's attention in the early days of the search. They had visited every house near the cafe, and at one of these homes, two Lithuanian brothers and the wife of one of them were living. None of them spoke Swedish, and they communicated only in English. Returning to the warehouse discovery, Forensic experts explain that when criminals commit serious crimes, their bodies produce large amounts of adrenaline, sometimes leading to uncontrollable urges. For instance, many murderers have urinated themselves during or before committing the crime. Considering that Lisa's glove and earrings had been found at the warehouse, the police hypothesized that if she had been kidnapped, the perpetrator might have dragged her into the warehouse. Therefore, they didn't rule out the possibility that the perpetrator, under the influence of adrenaline, couldn't control themselves and left behind the waste. This sample was sent for DNA analysis. By Friday, the search area expanded, and volunteers arrived at a farm about 2 miles from the cafe. This was a complex with several large buildings where many people worked. The search team decided to check the entire area. However, shortly after they arrived, 2 men appeared at the farm. They didn't speak Swedish and only communicated in English. One of them said the police had already been to the farm, but the search team leader didn't believe it right away. He thought that if that were true, he would have known. So, they continued their search. These 2 men walked around the farm for a while, observing the volunteers, then left. About an hour later, members of the search team discovered a pile of branches behind the cattle shed. Beneath the pile, they found a motorcycle helmet, a jacket, and headphones. The police quickly arrived at the scene and confirmed that all these items belonged to Lisa. Forensic experts were dispatched to the farm to conduct a more detailed investigation. The police also heard the story of the 2 strange men trying to stop volunteers from checking the farm, and they recalled the account of the woman who had encountered a suspicious man speaking English when she was out for her run. In fact, from the early days of the investigation, the police had indirect reasons to suspect them. The 2 brothers worked at the warehouse across from the cafe, where Lisa's glove had been found, and at the farm where her helmet was discovered. They were familiar with these locations, and the dirt road where Lisa's belongings were found led straight to their house. Since there were no other suspects, the police decided to interrogate all 3 men. Meanwhile, forensic experts, along with volunteers, continued to search the area around the farm. Their attention quickly turned to an old trailer. The trailer was surrounded by tall grass and appeared to have been abandoned for years. However, next to the door, the grass was flattened, as if something had recently been lying there. Some of the grass was even caught under the door, indicating that it had been opened recently. When the forensic experts opened the trailer door, they were immediately overwhelmed by a strong, foul smell. Inside, there were several lockers containing clothes, suggesting that this place had once been used as a changing room for workers. All the lockers were locked, except for one, which led the experts to suspect that Lisa's body might be inside. They began to open each locker and eventually found Lisa's body in the unlocked one. She was hidden behind a pile of clothes and old rags. Despite the small size of the locker, the perpetrator had still managed to stuff the victim inside. Lisa was bound with a string around her neck and had several layers of tape wrapped around her head. Her pants were pulled down, and her shirt was lifted. Medical experts determined the cause of death to be strangulation. However, there were no signs of sexual assault. All of Lisa's clothing was sent to the lab for analysis, while news of her body being found quickly spread throughout the country. Throughout Lisa's disappearance, news of her kidnapping dominated the headlines in Sweden. When her body was found and the public learned about the brutal murder, the entire country was shaken. Such crimes were very rare in Sweden, and people were shocked by the cruelty involved. Not long after, forensic experts found crucial evidence at the warehouse and farm, using all available resources and manpower. On the same day Lisa's body was found, a strange and eerie event occurred. YouTube users discovered a video that had been uploaded 13 days before the murder. The video, titled 13, displayed a countdown timer. What shocked everyone the most was the name of the channel that posted the video, called Lisa Holm. News about this video quickly spread across the media, leaving many stunned by the strange coincidences. Some began to speculate that someone had predicted the murder, but in reality, the situation was much simpler. It turned out that someone had changed the channel name and video title after Lisa's body was discovered. It seemed like this person wanted to spark a conspiracy theory or simply play a malicious prank. Meanwhile, The police were working tirelessly to quickly catch the murderer. By the time Lisa's body was found, investigators had summoned two brothers and a woman for questioning. All three denied any involvement in the murder and provided alibis for each other. According to their statements, the older brother, Nerais, had been sleeping in his room when Lisa was abducted. His wife was preparing dinner, and the younger brother was using the computer. Nerais further stated that around 8 p.m., he woke up and went to the gas station to buy pizza and cigarettes. The police were suspicious of these statements, as all three might have been covering for each other. They collected DNA samples from all three, but no direct evidence linking them to the crime was found. However, the lack of evidence didn't last long. Forensic experts continued working at the warehouse and farm. The police quickly made a breakthrough when they focused their investigation on a small room resembling an office in the barn. This room had a large window overlooking the cafe, and it became a key crime scene. Upon searching the room, forensic experts found 15 different male semen stains on the walls and floor near the window. It seemed that someone had been standing there, watching the cafe staff, including Lisa, and had masturbated. Samples were sent to the lab, where DNA profiles were quickly extracted. The results were shocking. All 15 samples matched the DNA of the 35-year-old brother, Nerais. The semen found in the barn also belonged to him. In an adjacent room, previously used for storing cow's milk, experts found a pipe about 60 centimeters from the floor. Although it was covered in dust, a small strip of the pipe was clean, matching the size of the rope used to strangle Lisa. Blood stains on the pipe were analyzed, and the DNA was confirmed to belong to Nerais. On the floor below the pipe, the police found a piece of rope with both Lisa and Nerais' DNA. This was a critical breakthrough, directly linking Nerais to the murder weapon. Further evidence was found, including Lisa's hair on the floor of the room and DNA traces from Nerais on her jacket. These findings strengthened the theory that Lisa had been killed in that very room. Investigators reconstructed the sequence of events. Nerais had been watching the cafe for a while. When Lisa was alone in the parking lot, he approached her, possibly under the pretense of asking for directions or using another trick. With her kind nature and willingness to help, Lisa might have agreed. Once she got into his vehicle, Nerais subdued her by covering her mouth and drove her to the barn. There, he wrapped a rope around her neck and hung her, ending her life. According to medical experts, the pipe might have excited Nerais to the point of losing control and defecating on the floor due to the adrenaline rush from Lisa's death. Afterward, he placed her body in the vehicle and drove to the farm, throwing her belongings out of the window along the way. There, he hid her body in a locker inside a trailer, covering it with old clothes scattered about. The entire process, from the abduction to hiding the body, took less than an hour. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Nerais continued to insist on his innocence. His wife and younger brother were released, as there was no evidence against them. Shortly after their release, both left Sweden and returned to Lithuania. The preparation for the trial was intense. Nerais claimed that he had worked in the barn for a long time, explaining that his DNA could be there due to his work. Furthermore, he had alibi evidence from his wife and younger brother, although the authenticity of their statements was in doubt. In court, these testimonies could work in his favor. However, the presence of Nerais' DNA on the victim's clothing could only be explained by direct contact with Lisa on the day of the crime. The police also found a witness who had seen his car near the cafe just before and after Lisa was abducted. According to the witness, the car drove back and forth on the road between the cafe and the farm, coinciding with the time his wife and younger brother claimed Nerais was sleeping at home. In the months following the discovery of Lisa's body, experts continued analyzing all the evidence with the most modern methods to strengthen the case. Eventually, they found traces of Nerais' DNA on most of Lisa's clothing, including inside her underwear. With the entire country following the case, investigators kept searching for useful clues to support the legal process and further prove Nerais' involvement. They even traveled to Lithuania to speak with his wife and younger brother again. The wife still insisted that Nerais had not left the house from 6 to 8 p.m. that evening. But when it was the younger brother's turn to be questioned, the police finally got what they needed. After the investigators presented all the evidence against Naris and detailed what he had done to the 17-year-old girl, the younger brother decided to tell the whole truth. He admitted that Naris was not at home that evening and only returned around 7:30 p.m., covered in mud, and immediately threw all his clothes into the washing machine. When the police started questioning everyone and visited their homes, Naris whispered to his brother, "Tell them I was at home during that time." Naris then explained that he feared being blamed because he was an immigrant and had no alibi for the time when Lisa was abducted. The younger brother had initially believed that his brother was not involved in the case, but after hearing all the evidence, he realized the opposite. Lisa's funeral took place just 1 month after she was murdered. The church hosting the ceremony could only accommodate 130 people, but many more attended to pay their respects. The organizers even had to set up chairs and a large screen outside so everyone could watch the ceremony. The trial began 4 months after the crime, attracting nationwide attention. The pressure weighed heavily on everyone involved in the trial, and no one was allowed to make mistakes. Naris's lawyer insisted that the DNA found on his client's clothing was his. The suspect argued that his DNA could have appeared on the victim's clothes because he had worked in the barn. However, the prosecution dismissed this explanation as unreasonable, particularly regarding Lisa's underwear, where DNA could only be transferred if the suspect had made direct contact. His lawyer failed to provide convincing evidence to defend his client's innocence. At one point, he even suggested that the real killer was the suspect's younger brother, claiming that the brother had deliberately placed Naris's DNA on the victim and at the crime scene. However, this theory lacked credibility as the lawyer could not explain how this had been done. The trial lasted a month and ended with Naris, the suspect, being convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment in a high-security prison in Sweden. Despite the harsh sentence, the prison conditions were compared to a modest 3-star hotel. The lawyer's appeal was rejected in early 2017. Later, Naris himself requested to be deported to serve his sentence in Lithuania. Although prison conditions in Lithuania were much harsher, the Swedish court approved his request, citing the high cost of maintaining prisoners in Sweden. Naris's motive became clearer later that year when he appealed to a Lithuanian court and had his sentence reduced from life imprisonment to 15 years. However, this victory was short-lived. A few weeks later, the court reversed the decision and reinstated the life sentence. By then, Naris had lost hope of returning to the comfortable Swedish prison. In August 2022, 5 years after being transferred to Lithuania, Naris met a tragic end. While being moved between prisons, he was attacked with a homemade knife, seriously wounded, and died on the way to the hospital. As for Naris's wife, the question of her involvement in the crime remains unanswered. Although there is no evidence directly linking her to the kidnapping or murder, investigators have not ruled out the possibility that she knew about her husband's crime and helped him escape justice by providing false alibi evidence. Naris's younger brother is also under suspicion. A witness reported seeing 2 men near the barn, possibly Naris and his brother. However, no DNA from the brother was found on the victim or at the crime scene, making it unlikely that he was involved in the murder. It is possible that the 2 brothers had been watching the young staff member and discussing inappropriate things, but it seems only Naris carried out the brutal act. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.